Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. I'm your host, Kiera Dent, and I have this crazy idea that maybe I could combine a doctor and a team member's perspective because let's face it, dentistry can be a challenging profession with those two perspectives. I've been a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, regional manager, practice owner, and I have a team of traveling consultants where we have traveled to over 165 different offices coaching teams. Yep, we don't just understand you, we are you. Our mission is to positively impact the world of dental, and I believe that this podcast is the greatest way I can help elevate teams, grow VIP experiences, reduce stress, and create A-teams. Welcome to the Dental A-Team Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the interview portion. We're really excited. We don't talk a lot about the team dynamics. We do maybe I do when I'm frustrated, but we don't really we tap into it. But we've had quite a few podcasts in this year, just kind of sprinkling it about amongst different episodes and different series. But we're gonna dive into it in this particular episode. And so, Kiera, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell everyone what does the team dynamics look like for you, and why are you so interested in it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, guys. It's super fun to be with you and to be a part of your audience. And I love the hygiene and the team dynamic because working as a dental assistant and then an office manager, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, regional manager, owning practices, every piece plays a part. And so my name's Kiera Dent. My last name really is Dent. I get asked that all the time. People have asked me if it's a stage name, and I'm like, no, it just took 3 fiancés to get that. That's a true story as well. So another day, guys. But yeah, so I just loved the team aspect. I loved being on both sides of the coin. I mean, being an owner of a practice and being a team member of a practice, I realized there's got to be a better way to do this. I think so often we don't talk about how we all work as a team, even though we do. And so that's why we made the Dental A-Team. And so it's really about bringing doctors and hygienists and dental assistants and every piece of the practice together to have a fully functioning team that moves in the same direction. So when we go in and coach offices or we're working with offices, we're constantly looking at how can we get everybody on the same page to run together to make it easier for each other instead of working against each other, which I think a lot of offices do, not even intentionally. So, hygienists could be jamming it, rocking it out, and the dental assistants don't see it. I mean, I remember even in an office, people said well, how come our hygienists are in our same office bonus structure? And I said, well, because they get your patients numb and tee up treatment. And so I think it's just fun to dispel the myths of what we think and really help people come together. So that's kind of my reason why I'm obsessed with team and all the pieces to it. So that's me in a nutshell.
And is that the focus of your podcast as well? Is just really diving into different aspects of this?
Yeah. So the focus of the podcast, I realized that there wasn't a lot out there for growing and developing people in the dental world that weren't dentists or hygienists. Dentists and hygienists have their degrees, they've got their licenses, so they're really hardcore on CE. And I thought, well, if we're growing our doctors and our hygienists, what about the rest of the team? Where is a good place for them to go where they actually can learn more and to grow? Because I'm if we're going to talk about building teams and developing people, why are we not developing the whole team? So I said, okay, I'm going to bring the Dental A-Team podcast in. We're going to have the doctor side, the team member side, and we're all going to work together. So we make them short, snappy, just have a lot of fun on that podcast. But really it was to have, it's not CE, but it was more development ideas for the whole team. So that way the rest of the team's not lagging behind our positions that require licenses and CE continually.
I love that. What have you found though, throughout this journey are the sticking points between the team members becoming more cohesive?
Ooh, I think there's a lot of pieces. I would say, right off the bat, the first one that came to mind is missed expectations. So I think it's the expectation of what people think a hygienist should do, what people think a doctor should do, what people think an assistant should do. And so we have all these preconceived notions, and honestly, frustration only occurs when expectations are missed. So when we're missing those expectations, that's when there's a lot of sticking point. And then it's like learning how to communicate and have those hard conversations that don't actually have to be hard, but we actually talk it through. So I think when you align people with goals, they're headed in the same direction. I mean, I do an example of paper airplanes all the time. I'm like, everybody just make your own plane, and they fly it and they go in a bajillion different directions. It's, different ways. And then we all make it together. The whole team finally all goes together in the same direction. It's easier. So I think it's that, like having clear expectations of goals of what people are supposed to do, and then learning how to communicate through that. So you're actually all on the same page versus feeling like you're all on your isolated islands, which I think can happen in practices if you're not careful. You have your hygiene department, your dental assistant department, your front office department, your doctors, and you forget that we're all on the same island together. We're not on our own individual islands within a practice.
Is it okay if I ask Michelle?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm kind of hogging the mic here.
No, it's good.
Because very specifically, you mentioned goals, and goals, I think I agree with you. They're absolutely vital to the success of an organization. I find like the hard part though would be, how do you structure a goal though that is speaking to every type of individual that is a part of the office? Because I feel like there's clinical goals, there's different metrics that are kind of soft skills versus hard skills. So how do you come up with something like that that's going to speak to everybody? Or can you train that into people?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's like, okay, so if we say we're going to go make $1 million, well, there's so many pieces that have to get there for that $1 million. So what you do is you set like an overarching, where does the practice want to go? And I love to do this from every department because I think every department sees it a little differently. So guys, what would it look like if we were going, in 1 year, in 3 years, 10 years, and have every person in the practice or just your leadership team, depending upon the size of your practice, build out what they see it becoming. And then when they actually can do that, then people realize like, okay, so we're all aligned. We all agree that we want to hit, maybe it's a 5% growth or we're doing a 10% growth. Well, now let's break it down to individual KPIs per department that's specific for you. So I think it's like really important for a team to get, and I only go to 3 goals. I don't go more than 3 goals. I'm really big on, let's just do 3 goals. And then that everybody agrees with, or we get the bulk of the majority to tie into, and then asking each department, how can you specifically get there? What measurable KPIs do we have? And then it's easy because now we're all focused on the same 3 goals. We're all looking for how we individually can bring that to the table, and we're able to rock and roll that way versus, and there's so many pieces, but I think that actually because there's so many pieces, offices can get hung up on focusing on too many things that actually don't move the needle forward. So it's like streamlining, all of us are aligned, then let's build KPIs that support that. And I don't believe that there are failures. I just believe there are results. So are the results you're getting what you want? And if not, let's pivot and change to get what you're actually looking for.
So how do you deal with team members like myself who get very stressed out at the idea of a KPI? Like if someone was like, what's your KPI? I'm like, I don't even care.
Sorry, for our audience, I don't know if we define it. Key performance indicators, KPI, for those who aren't aware of that, by the way.
For sure.
Yeah, good call. Well, especially if those KPIs or even any of the goals are percentage or production based. Like Andrew works very well with that. We've established.
We just had this conversation yesterday too. I love KPIs. I love production. I love this. And then,
yeah. And I am super stressed out by it. And which is why I work in public health, because we're more about making sure that we're taking care of our community. And that I'm like, oh, yes, rain on me, that kind of world all day, every day. But Andrew's like, I don't know if I could work in that world. So is it just about maybe making sure that you've set a mission statement for your office and your facility, your practice, whatever that is, and making sure when you hire or making sure your team members are all aligned? And if it's an office that's a little bit more production based, making sure you find the team members that can also flow with that and maybe rethinking the other ones?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, Michelle. And it's something we come up on. I mean, the dental team has coached over 165 different practices. Like we've physically been into those practices. We've worked in them. And what I found is, I think it's like switching our mindset too. Because I used to think, well, and I'll pose the question of how come it has to be production or patient care? Why can't it be production and patient care? Because I think oftentimes we think like if we're hitting production goals and we're forgetting patient care. I will also say when I'm eating healthy versus when I have a weight loss goal, I tend to be a lot healthier on my eating and have cleaner eating because I have a goal to work towards. So I think it's just honestly, like I used to think if we had production goals, my office was only concerned about money. Like truly, I was a dental assistant, guys. I was a treatment coordinator scheduler, and I was like, what is this office? All they care about is money. Well, I realized I actually would innovate and I would create different ways when I had a goal or a target to get. And it's really funny because I actually have a new girl that's hired. She's never had like goals to work towards. And so we said, okay, we're trying to get, we're so vain, you guys. I'll just be honest, like dental aid team over here, we have this like really cool goal to get 10,000 followers because we want that swipe up option on your story. Like how pathetic that we've got.
Speaking my language.
That's a goal of ours too.
That's also a goal. Yes.
All right. So if any of you want to help out, go follow the dental aid team, help the Tale of Two Hygienists. You know, we're trying to get this swipe up option. So like it sounds silly, but when I was talking to this girl, we said, okay, is X amount of followers realistic? And she was like, well, like, I think we should test it, see if it's realistic. And then she's like, but if I had a goal, I'm going to think more creatively and I'm going to innovate and I'm going to find ways to hit that goal. She's like, whereas if I didn't have that goal, I would just have whatever comes my way. So I think it's really important to find out, like for you, Michelle, like let's talk about why you don't like production goals. Like let's talk about why that stresses you out. I'm guessing.
Please let's not talk about that.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that off air. We'll do it off air, Michelle. It's totally fine. But I think it's just a matter of, like generally speaking, me as a team member, I wanted to get my gold stars. I wanted to high five my office and I wanted to grow and expand. So I think when people realize we've always said think about it. When production numbers are higher, those are most of the time, not always, but I think generally those are your really good practices and they're growing. And so I've always said the production measuring stick, if you will, is to see how many patients we're serving and how well we're serving them. Because if we're serving more patients and we're serving them really well, our numbers will go up. Our KPIs will naturally increase. So I look at that as, hey, we all joined healthcare. I mean, at least I did. I'm sure you guys did too, to help patients. And so to me, that's a tangible measuring stick I can see of how many patients are we helping? How do we need to innovate and create differently to do better? Now, can that be taken the wrong way? For sure. And have I seen offices do it the wrong way? And I think so often we're scared of those 1, 2, or 3 offices that really just like muddied the water for all of us versus how many other great companies there are that focus on it. And as a team member, I wanted something measurable that I could actually follow versus an emotional feel. I wanted to know, like, are we doing this? But then you got to talk about it. I don't think a one size fits all is for all practices or all team members. I think it's more, all right, let's figure this out. Let's figure out why you don't like that. But I would go back to what I said at the very beginning of why does it have to be production or patient care? Why can't we have it be production and patient care and that they can coincide together and we really do innovate and create better for them? That's my take, though. I don't know what your guys' take on that is.
No, I mean, I think you and I are speaking a lot of the same language. For me, especially with offices or systems that have some objectivity to it, to me, that's what builds that little bridge to getting from taking care of the patient to the production side. If you look at the hygiene production schedule, there's going to be a lot of perio procedures that are built into the hygiene side of things that are going to increase your production. The only way to get there is through accurate measurements and objective measurements. And so that's going to be all of your soft tissue, hard tissue evaluations, and all the tools that we have at our disposal to do all those types of things. What I feel is happening is throughout the United States, we're doing too many of these bloody prophies. We're doing too many things that we're doing a procedure that's like not even a real procedure. It's like a hybrid of something that doesn't actually exist. And we're not documenting that properly. Now, if we were to document it properly, there would be unfortunately a higher charge to the patient to do the right work. But in my mind, it's now saying that we are assigning the proper values to the proper treatment that we're doing. And yes, we are making more money by doing that, but we're also serving the public. And then there's the whole insurance side of it too, of now we're proving to the insurance that we are doing these procedures. You guys need to pay more for this and, build these into your packages and things like that. But that's a whole different thing. But I think you and I are on the same side with the production side of it can be beneficial.
Well, I would say to that too, I've seen a lot of hygienists who do bloody prophies, and it's crazy because when they start to think of like, well, how am I going to hit this goal or what am I going to do to innovate? I am always shocked at how they're like, Kiera, reality was, and this isn't always, I'm not going to say it's a one size fits all. I don't understand hygiene world, guys. That's why I love to talk to hygienists because I'm like, I don't know what that feels like. That's one position I've never done. And I think it's just interesting because I think for some, goals motivate. For others, maybe we change it up. But I think there's always a KPI or some type of goal, because I heard a quote the other day that I really love, and it's kind of become my mantra. And they say, good always gets in the way of great. And so we don't want to just be good enough or like, hey, we're just doing this. Like, how can we be great? And I think there's always a next level of greatness for every single one of us. It just depends on how we want to get there. And I truly don't think there's a one size fits all. I think there's lots of different paths to get there. My favorite is obviously having a goal. I like targets. I like that. But for some hygienists, Michelle, to your point, not all hygienists like that. Not all team members like that. So let's figure out why. Let's come up with something that does work, that they can measure, because we'd rather have it be something they measure versus not. So we know, are we being good, or how can we get to great in every single aspect? That's my take though. Michelle, what's yours? I'm super curious what you think.
No, I think you're right. And I think you made a really good point of there are a lot of us who have had those waters muddied by a few people, a few bad apples. I'll just mix all my analogies. A few bad apples have, created this like muscle memory, and we get this knee-jerk reaction when we hear goals in production, because it was, if you're not selling X amount of whitening from the hygiene room, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, but no one needed it. Like, they all had burial. I'm not even talking about whitening. Or, if you're not diagnosing the need for a crown, X amount, I'm like, that, those kind of goals, those make me start itching and like get hives. I'm like, how can you give me that as a metric when you don't know who's sitting in my chair? Because that's not need-based. That's, your production, it feels greed-based, not need-based to me.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, and I'm also personally, I'm trying to work along my own, I guess, self-awareness of my reaction, because there are certain situations that happen like that create this visceral response that makes me either put a wall up or lash out. And I know, and I work for a group now that is not like that. They are, need-based. It's fantastic. And that's where I thrive. But I didn't realize those people existed.
Yes, for sure. And that's honestly my zone on the dental A team is I'm like, guys, like, let's positively impact the world of dental. Let's change some of those yucky things. Just like we're trying to change dentistry. I mean, you think about, so sorry, guys. You think about like, okay, we have all these patients that are coming in that hate the dentist, and we're trying to change their minds to remind them that, hey, there are hygienists who aren't terrible, that aren't. I had a friend, he's like, they use the iron hook on me. I'm like, they don't use an iron hook. Like,
oh, that's a good one.
I laughed so hard. But, we're trying to change that mindset. And I feel that's what we're all trying to do in dentistry, is also change that mindset for team members and for people, because I'm a huge believer, Michelle, I'm never the person who's going to say you need to do X amount of whitening, because to me, why do that? That's putting a standard out there that's not need-based. I'm going to say out there, hey, let's do, here's your goal of, maybe it's $1,000 a day or whatever. I don't care how you get there. I don't want you doing things unethically, but there's no quota of how many whitenings, how many this, how many that. It's more, let's just make sure we're actually doing and looking, because when you have that goal, I've found like, okay, if I'm going to need to do 1,000 a day, I'm going to look for ways as a scheduler. I'm going to look for ways to make sure I've got you scheduled up there. I'm going to look for the FMXs that we probably would have missed. I'm going to look for the perio, and it's not missing those little pieces so often. Now, yes, a KPI I will put on there is fluoride for every patient. And it's because I'm such a believer, and a lot of hygienists wouldn't offer me fluoride. And I was like, hey, your job is to educate me. My job is to say yes or no. And there were so many people, because I had a healthy mouth, and so they figured Kiera doesn't need it. Then I find out that fluoride was a proactive preventative procedure, and I was like, what? Guys, like, offer it to me. So there are a few things that I'll spin the table on and just shake up, like our views on it. But I think at the end of the day, what's the whole reason of a KPI? What's the whole reason of having a goal? Is to ensure that we're not missing those little pieces. But like you said, making sure we're ethical and honest about it. Because I think when you go to the yucky zone of doing treatment that's not necessary to hit a goal, that's when we've missed the mark and the goal becomes wrong. And now we're missing the mark of good is getting in the way of great.
Can
Go ahead.
Can we pivot a little bit? I would love to know what's the back office missing, or maybe specifically hygienists from all of your coaching. What are we missing in our relationship with the front office staff?
Hang on. Hello. Yes, I'm good. Thanks, guys.
Oh, that's adorable.
That's sweet.
I'm in the middle
Just
of
doing a
nowhere.
podcast here. Don't worry.
Just don't
Yeah,
worry.
no problem.
Like-
This is totally normal.
I've got a microphone in the car outside of someone's house in the middle of nowhere. It's totally normal, guys.
It's cool.
Kate.
It's cool.
I apologize, Andrew. We're going to cut that part. Apologies. What was your question?
I don't really remember it, but it was along the lines of like, what are we missing as the back office staff, or maybe even specifically hygienist, in our relationship with the front office staff?
Oh, yes. Okay. So what I've found from like the missing link between front and back is, I think a big piece is we're all on the same team. I really do. Because I think so often, you guys, I was a snotty dental assistant at one point in my career where I would tell them like, get these kid profies out of my schedule and give them to the hygienist, or like, I don't want to do this, and I forget that as a scheduler, it's really hard. And so I think for all of us to say yes as often as possible, like looking for the yes, how can we help out? How can we see? And I know I hate a patient being added to my schedule at 4:00 when I think I'm done. There's a missed expectation. I think I'm done. You add a 4:00 in there. I want to freaking wring your neck because I had the expectation I'm done. So I'm glad you hit your scheduling goal, but like, get me out of here, jerks. So I think that that's a piece of like, let's all remember we're on the same team and we're playing for the same team, and to say yes and thank you as often as possible. Hygienists, I think this is going to sound scary to say on a hygiene podcast. Like, I hope I'm loved and not hated at the end of this, but I think hygienists, like, there's so many cool things hygienists can do. I mean, like taking payments for fluoride in your op, then you don't have to wait up front, or like scheduling certain patients that don't take a lot of time. It just looks a little different than what we've ever done. And especially with COVID, I think with that can help exponentially. I'm not saying, I never suggest that we make our hygiene schedule run behind. That's not what I'm saying. What I do say is hygienists look for those little pieces that will ultimately make your life easier, like getting credit cards on file so you can just run that and get them back. But I really think end all be all for both sides of the coin, remember we're all playing on the same page. And I do say for an office, if you're going to add a patient in, hygienists and dental assistants say yes as often as possible. For an office, go double check instead of just like casually sticking in there. It's like breaking up with someone via text and you don't want to actually like talk to them face to face. So you just like drop someone in their patient spot and then like don't talk to them. I think making sure we give them the opportunity front and back, because there is that expectation that you're done and then they put a patient in and it becomes really frustrating. So I think I answered the question for both sides of the coin, not necessarily just for hygiene. I think that can help the whole office just function better.
I'm curious, Andrew, where do you fall on that? Like what she said about taking payments in the back.
Good thing they can't see the
I have
Zoom
a feeling
recording.
we have different opinions on this.
I have like such a scared face saying it.
No, this is how we have conversations.
My scared face was more of like, look, my business model is different. I can't really talk about our business model on air. It's just kind of a thing I can't do. But hypothetically,
yes.
Hypothetically, in an office, if I was working in private practice or whatever, I am so pro team that I think that it'd be fine with me to a certain extent. What would bother me, I think, is if the expectation then gets shifted towards, oh, Andrew's always going to be doing this, not as in he's just trying to help out the team and he's being a good team player. You mentioned it multiple times, Kiera, like the expectation thing. I love being helpful. I love doing that extra little bit when it's not really expected of me to do to help everyone else out. But I just don't think that should be a part of the hygiene appointment, if that makes sense.
For sure. And it's got to be a whole office where we talk about it, because I think saying like, hey, hygienist, we're going to have you start taking payments because we heard this cool podcast. So like, just do it. Like vomit. No way. Because you don't have buy-in. You haven't heard their side of it. I will say I'm very pro every person in the practice looking to say how we can say yes versus how we can say no. I think we're so programmed to say no. Like, nope, that's not going to work. Nope, I don't want to do it. Nope. And so I think if we all realize like, hey, could this be a better patient experience overall? I know like it's totally untraditional and it's totally foreign, but I also think you guys, so often I've seen this and I was guilty of it myself, where I did not get the buy-in of my team before I executed an idea, and therefore there was the resentment. The only time there's ever frustration in this world is when expectations are not met. So get your team on board. It doesn't mean, honestly, Andrew, if we had a conversation and you said, okay, great, like we can take payments for this, got it. Even though you might not necessarily want to initially or later, that's fine. But there's a conversation being had, you're giving buy-in, and therefore we're not having a frustration occur. And I also think it's important to say, like, we're going to try this for 6 weeks and then we pivot. You guys do SRPs and bring them back in 6 weeks to check. That's why I do this whole, let's do it for 6 weeks, check and see. It gives us enough time to have a result. But I'm really, really pro. Don't just expect your hygiene or any department to do certain things without having a conversation with a set time frame of how long it's going to happen. And then we check to see, are we getting the results we're looking for? Or if not, and let's pivot until we do.
I also really like the idea that you said, though, is like, if the credit card is on file and it's an easy step and it's okay, I've already educated the patient on what's going to be happening. They're fine with it. And all I have to do is click a button to generate that for their statement or whatever. No problem. That part's really easy. I think it's harder if you're saying, okay, Andrew, here's a square that you're going to put on the phone, and then you're going to swipe their card, and then you're also going to have a cash drawer, and you need to give out change. Yes, that stuff starts to become really daunting.
Also, could you also scan their groceries while you're at it and
exactly.
Check on their mileage? No.
Exactly.
But yes, and I'm super pro. I think because I'm an outsider and I don't work in the practice right now, it helps because I can see, okay, how do all the spokes of the practice work together in harmony? And let's find the most efficient, effective way. Because honestly, hygienists, I hear it all the time. We freaking hate going up to the front, standing in line for our checkout. We have a patient and I'm like, if I could just help you find a way to run that $30 for fluoride, you're already done. Why do you need to stop up front? They're done. Get them out of there. Get you guys moving on. And so it's always from an efficiency, effectiveness point of view as well. So agreed. It should never be something where we're like, all right, hygiene, this is what you're doing. You're like, whoa, let's talk about this. Let's clear those expectations and minimize that frustration. Absolutely. Guess what's back, you guys? Women Dentists Connect. Yes, Dr. Summer Casmel and myself are putting on our first ever virtual event. We did it last year. We had raving fans, and due to COVID-19, we decided we're going to continue on. So mark your calendars, November 13th and 14th. All women in dentistry. We don't care who you are. If you're a doctor, a treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, spouse, we want all females to come with us to Women Dentists Connect. So pop on over to our website, womendentistconnect.com. Tickets are on sale right now. And we even did a thing where it's your entire team can actually come. We want all of you to come. It's going to be CE. We're going to talk about mom guilt, how to run a successful business. We're having an incredible speaker lineup with Dr. Mark Costas. He's our only male cameo. We're having Desiree Yazdan on social media marketing, Aaron Elliott, who's talking about sleep apnea. We're also bringing on Dr. Amanda Wilson to talk about ortho. And of course, Dr. Summer Casmel and myself will be there talking about how to hold your team accountable, how to run effective meetings. So don't wait. Get on over to womendentistconnect.com. I'll see you guys November 13th and 14th.
I struggle with it.
Okay, let's hear it, Michelle. I love this.
I struggle with it. I think, yes, from an occasional, like all of my sterilization is done. All of, I also flop between two rooms. That other room is taken care of. Like there's just so much back stuff that I need to, and now that I am so in like up to my eyeballs in infection prevention, I'm like, there are so many things not getting done in an office that me running a credit card, that would be so far down the list for me. However, if I had the sterilization was all caught up, all my instruments were wrapped, all the stuff was cleaned up, and I was just like sitting and chit-chatting because the doc was running late for an exam, and 100%. I'm like, hey, let me just make this go a little faster so we can get you out. But to think that is going to be the rule versus the exception to the rule, I think that's where it quickly shifts. Like Andrew said, like if it was just like, this is always going to happen, and all of a sudden it becomes a thing that I do in hygiene, that makes me very concerned. I think it should always be like your op duties are priority number one, because making sure that we create safe dental visits is, for me, it's the foundation, priority number one. If that person has to wait in line for 3 or 4 minutes to make sure that my op gets turned over properly, I'm like, that's where
it's at. Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's also
I think y'all both made good points though.
And I think, to your point, Michelle, I think when we're up to our eyeballs in infection control, and so like that's not the time nor the place to even consider this. Now, when your hygiene department's rocking and rolling and they've already crushed it and they're like, hey, what's our next best level? That's when you start to put these things in. I don't usually walk into a practice and say like, all right, guys, today's the day. We're going credit cards in the back. 100%. It's like the offices that are so...
cart before the horse.
Exactly. So I think in everything, like time and place, and like, let's make sure we're focused on the priorities, because at the end of the day, why would we even do credit cards in the back? It's to make a better patient experience overall. And that's what we're looking for. That might actually make a worse patient experience if we're up to our eyeballs, we're super late on it because we're all like gloved in PPE, taking like, no, that's not the time nor the place. Again, what can we do? How can we make this best for everyone? And I would just say, I'm always looking to see how can we make the practice the most efficient, best patient experience from every single person in the practice at the end of the day, because that's what we're looking for. So again, cart before the horse. Nope. Wrong time, wrong place. But I do think that there are times and seasons for everything. So I'd say like, look to see how often we can say, yes, I know I've been guilty of that. And people come and I'm super resistant. And I'm like, heck no, worst idea I've ever heard of. And then I'm like, okay, could there be a world that I could allow this to exist, that I could see it being amazing? For sure. Let me see if I could create that, if it's the cart before the horse or not. And I think same thing, because some hygienists are like, I need 90 minutes. I'm like, heck no, you don't need 90 minutes. Like, get back there and scale. I don't know what that's like. But the reality is like, maybe I shouldn't be as resistant to that as well. You know, there could be a reason that we need 90 minutes or we need X or whatever it is. And I think for both sides of this coin, front office team doctors being more open instead of saying no, I think we actually create a much better practice all around by looking to see how we could say yes, and does that world exist, or could I see it being something that would benefit us?
I think that's a very good way for every team member to approach anything new, is like, in what world could this work for me? Like if my initial is pushback, like, but what would it look like if this was implemented? Like, when would I feel comfortable with it? I think that's excellent. And then we talk about it and see if there's even reasonable. Some of it's
Exactly. That's 100% it. So, and that actually came from a hygienist. I had her on my podcast and she said, you know, usually I'll say no, like I couldn't do this. And then she thought, well, could there be a way that I could do this? And I loved that she did that, because I thought, I'm guilty of that as well. I'm guilty of saying, no, there's no way this could work. And maybe there is a world that this could work and it could make my life so much better. I've just done it for so long that I'm set in my patterns and my routines, and I know this works. But oftentimes the best changes are where we innovate and create an even better practice. That's how it happens.
So I'm curious if you have top five characteristics, or I don't even know what the word is that I would want to use, but what would make a team great? Like if they have these, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 7, whatever it is. But like if you walked in and you consulted and they had X, Y, and Z, and you're like, oh, I don't even need to be here.
Yes, those offices are a dream. Okay, so I don't have like this list. I should probably have a list. That's a great question, Michelle. So this is just going to be a full-on rift. I'm going to just tell you off the top of my head what comes. I would say first and foremost, it's a practice that can communicate, that's not afraid to talk hard issues. Because there's efficiency and there's ease and there's safety and security. So like 4 things in one piece. Those team members aren't afraid. They can go toe to toe with one another. They know they're going to work it out. So those practices are just amazing, because I know I can go in there, we can shake the water and they'll be fine. It's not the drama office that you're afraid to say anything that you'll tiptoe around on. So that's like probably the first thing that comes to my mind. Second is you actually have team leads. I'm really big on team leads. So you have your leads of each department. Because you can just grow and expand and people get more help. Now, obviously having good team leads are another piece of that. But I really am pro that, because I found as a office manager, as a regional manager myself, I could not know what was going on with each team member. I didn't have the support for them. And so I'm really big on having it. And I'm even fine. Like, you're not a team lead once and for all. You're the best person in the best position for the practice. So there could come a time where the practice has outgrown you or you don't fit that role anymore. And that's okay. I tell people it's very fluid, and it should be fluid for whatever is best for the practice and our patients overall. So those are two things. A third thing, I'm really big on high collections as well. They've got to be able to collect money and present treatment plans effectively. Offices who aren't afraid to talk money, they realize that they do a great service. They collect. I'm really pro that, because otherwise, and that practice just feels safe and secure. They're not stressed about finances. They're not always, like the offices that don't collect, there's always stress in that practice, always, because they're constantly concerned about money. They're like pushing production. They're pushing all these things. It's like marching orders. And so they've really got to be secure. And then I'm really pro on the owner of the practice knowing how to run a business. So they actually look to see that they have their numbers. I mean, offices that had 3 months of reserve or 6 months of reserve did not stress or panic as much through COVID as other practices. So I'm really big on, if you're going to be an owner, like, be an actual owner that takes that job seriously. And I say that with all the love, because we all are learning and growing. I'm learning and growing. Shoot, COVID hit me. Like, I came back from Antarctica and then voila, here we are. So like, thankfully I got back. But like, that's what I'd say. So I think those pieces, it's really about your leadership and who the director of the ship is. If they're willing to have those hard conversations, because your team is a direct reflection of the leader at the helm. So whatever that leader is, are they into personal development? Are they into making sure they're prepared as an owner? Do they empower their team? I'm also big on good morale, but I think that comes from being honest and having good open communication and celebrating the wins and discussing where we're struggling. So I think that was kind of like a jumbled answer. So if I were to recap it, I'd say communication is strong, but that's going to come from your leadership. So the leadership of the owner of the practice is willing to have those uncomfortable conversations. They know how to run a practice. They know how to help and support their team. And they're all willing to discuss that openly. And then I would say from there, making sure your billing and your collections are good. So you're not always stressed. And then making sure the leads in each position, so every person's not kind of flailing and being forgotten. And that ties into like your monthly one-on-ones, checking in with each team member. I don't do it as check-ins, like, let's see, Michelle and Andrew, are you doing your job? Like, no, like, let's talk about how you are. Like, how are you contributing to the practice? How are you being supported? Do you feel you're being stretched to grow? Do you feel like you're stagnant? Actually knowing your team, to me, that's the office that I know will flourish no matter what happens, because they've got the foundation that's solid.
No, and that I was actually, one of my questions, and Andrew, I know you had a question there, was like, doesn't a practice have daily team huddles? Are they doing monthly meetings? But the check-ins too, I think, are incredibly important, as like maybe even just a one-on-one. And from a personal standpoint, somebody talked about that. I don't remember what interview that was that we had, Andrew, but they were like, I check in and see if I know my assistant is a single mom, and like, how's it going? Or is there anything that I can do to support you? Because when they start thinking about like, my kid's not doing well, blah, 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 like that, it flows into work. And, just checking in and like knowing like, okay, she's had a bad month.
Yes.
This makes sense why the behavior or the attitude or the absent-mindedness sometimes has been there. But I was just thinking, like, is it a huddle that they do every day? Is it a team meeting or a monthly meeting that they do pretty often?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, like, I gave you guys a lot of soft skills, because I think when your people are that way, these other pieces will naturally follow. So like, yes, all of them have a morning huddle, and it's not let's just check off our schedule. It's how do we win this day? And we actually use it as a huddle. So it's not like, great, I'm seeing Sally at 10 and I'm seeing Kiera at 11. Like, no. We're talking about like, how do we win this day? And what does that even look like? And every person on the team knows, how do we win this day? They have weekly leadership calibration meetings. I'm huge on the book Traction for Offices by Gino Wickman. That will walk you through how to run a level 10 meeting. And I will tell you, from someone who ran a lot of meetings that were not a level 10, like, this is really helpful. It walks you through. They do monthly one-on-one. It could be check-ins. It could be to just find out how they're doing. They've got set core values. They've got set goals that everybody knows where we're headed. So there's no confusion. It's very clear, but it's also very open communication. So it's every person comes to the table with your best ideas. And this is going to help you guys exponentially because the whole team is focused on the same goals together. We're innovating together. We're creating together. You're talking that type of structure. But that, again, comes from your leadership team, your dynamics, like who is the leader of this team and what do they do? That's where it'll come in. So those are more your like hard skills and then your soft skills tied into one.
I've always enjoyed, like when I was lead, asking about vacations. Are you using your vacation? Do you have any planned? Things that are going to kind of get them refocused for, which is kind of selfish, but it's like get them refocused for working again. Are they using all of their continuing education credits? Are they a part of any local, associations or memberships of anything that we can help support them on? All of those types of things, I think, make them feel valued. I wanted to shift though and ask about when there's an opening in a practice and you're looking at 100 resumes. What are the things that you're looking for or maybe even during the interview? Like, what are you looking for that's going to help somebody stand out?
Okay. Solid question. I giggle because we used to have a company that was a really terrible idea. It was called Dental Placement Pros, and we were hiring for offices. And I realized that only offices in really hard to hire for places would actually use us. So it was so hard. I got really good at writing ads. I got good at interviewing. I don't know what I was thinking when I started this business, like entrepreneur. I started my first business, then we'll do a neck gun and another one. So this was one of those like crazy ideas. So, and I giggle because people who know me know I say I don't ever interview if there are pictures on the resume. And this might just be a jaded piece of me. Any person who had a picture, so like if you have a picture on your resume and you're not weird, like I'm sorry, I'm judging you right now, but every person who had a picture on their resume, I was like, these people are nuts. So that's my first thing, like a one-off, like I don't interview those people. So we recently just got an ad. Somebody responded to our ad just recently and they actually added a video. And I was like, wow, we're like up in this like no picture to video game. So we'll see what happens. But what I would say to that question, Andrew, is, and I don't mean to be vague on this, I'll give some specifics, but I'm real pro when you hire or you place an ad, you should darn well know who you want to hire. So I write an ad specifically. So if I'm hiring a greeter or a scheduler, I want them to be outgoing. I want them to be super very able to multitask. I want them to be quick on their feet. I want them to be organized. So I'm going to actually write that. And that's what I'm going to look for that person. For my hygienist, I'm looking for someone. I used to also judge hygienists too. Whenever they came through, hygienists who wore loops on their interviews always were better hygienists than ones who didn't. And I don't know, again, I'm not a hygienist. I won't claim to be one. That was just what I found on my interviews. So that was like my standard for hygienist. But I wanted a hygienist who was super thorough, who was eager to learn. So I'd put things on there of what was their most recent CE. I also want them to be a team player where they would look and go above and beyond. And I would ask specific questions of how they did that. And then I'm really big when I interview to ask them like, hey, so we're celebrating a win in 1 year from the day you're hired. What is the win? And when I ask that question, I'm looking to see, are you going to say, well, I would do this? Or are you going to say, we would do this? That subtle answer will tell me who this person is. Are they going to be an I player? They're going to drive the ball solely focused on themselves, or are they a team player? So that's what I'm really looking for. I'm really big on, I want hygienists who are incredible, that they'll run their own schedule, that they love to be proactive. They love to take care of their patients. They have incredible patient bedside manners. So it really just depends on what you're looking for would be the skill sets. And I'm pro, it's not a one size fits all. Every practice is different. You as the person who's hiring needs to know what you're actually hiring for. And I write on my ads, every one of them will say, our ideal whatever possesses XYZ. Because then I know and I can go back to that when I'm interviewing. Does this person actually have all these different pieces, or are we missing a piece because I actually know who I really want because I thought about it before I just placed an ad out there saying I need a hygienist. I hope they're great and I love them. No, this is exactly who I want. It makes it much easier to hire what you want versus what just comes your way.
I think That's some really solid advice. Surprised you said that about the picture, though.
Because yeah, we actually
we've had it opposite.
We have the opposite. We have a lot of people telling everyone to put the pictures on there, and actually, my CV does have my picture on there. Andrew doesn't.
I'm telling you, it's so, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what it was when we went through this spat. It was about 2-ish years ago that we interviewed so many people, and it could be changing now because I mean now there's like TikTok and there's all these different things. So I think before you know it, I think you're going to have a video resume that you're going to submit versus a paper one, so people can get to know you. But it's the ongoing joke with Kiera that people are like, don't put a picture on if you're going to apply for Kiera. Like, don't do it. Granted though, like doctors, associates are a different spin because most of them you want a picture of them on there. So it's all this weird world. So I think it's pick whatever you want. I think you'll be okay either way you go.
Well, yeah. And, honestly, if you're a person who thinks technology is amazing and video is amazing, and you go into a practice that's like, the hell is there a video link on here for? Like, what? That's probably not going to be your practice. But if somebody was like, oh my gosh, they have a video link, they know how to edit, they know how to put the stuff together, like, that is my person.
Exactly.
So,
and same thing for people who are interviewing.
Feels right.
Like, I also think when you're looking for a job, like, do the same thing. Know what you want your practice to have. So you're equally interviewing this practice. I don't think when we can let go of like a desperation of we're so desperate to hire somebody or we're so desperate to get a job, you actually get the job that really does fit you like a glove. Because you're intentional about it and you're going to find that because you're looking for it. So exactly. I think it's just, we have a joke about it, but like you said, there might be an office and that's what they're looking for. And the only thing is if you're putting a picture up there, do not have your Snapchat picture. Don't have your filters with hearts around it. We have seen plenty of those.
It needs to be a professional headshot picture.
It's crazy. I always think like, it's fine. I'm like, no, we're not talking the filtered one that you dolled up. Like we're talking just a professional picture. So yes, absolutely. That's what I'd say for both sides.
#no filter, y'all. So I have one last question as we close out to our podcast right now. You mentioned about like getting the buy-in, and one thing that popped into my head was, the person who is going to the CE courses, the person who's going even in the front team, like, oh, I found a new way to file insurance or a new software or whatever it is. And how do you get that buy-in from the rest of the team? Because, I think we've all experienced this where our doc goes and gets this crazy, well, maybe it's not crazy, but they get this, a lot of CE, and maybe they went and they bought this thing, and now we like show up on Monday and they're like, hey, this is what you're going to be using now. I'm like, what? Where did you even go this weekend? Like, I didn't even know you were going to CE. And now I got a whole new protocol to follow. Like, no. So how do you go and learn and grow? And when your team's not there to hear the message, get the buy-in from the rest of the team?
That's a great question. And it's something I see a lot. And I'm like, guys, I say don't overload your team because complexity is the enemy of execution. So if it's too hard, your team's not going to execute on it. So let's make it simple. So I think if you're going, maybe have a meeting. Say, hey guys, I'm super jazzed about this. I learned about it. Let's talk about how you think we could implement this. So it's no longer like we're implementing it, but you guys tell me how you want to implement it. Maybe we don't implement it this month. Maybe we implement it in 1 or 2 months because that's a better time. We can set things up. And that's how I am when it comes to getting team buy-in. I'm really pro, like actually make it a true plan because you're going to get better results as opposed to just this like haphazard result. And you're like, wait a second, that's not what I was looking for. Also, teams, look again, like we were talking about before, how can you say yes? What's the world that this could exist in? Maybe it's not today, maybe in say like 2 weeks. So I'm always like, I love that idea. Right now, we've got a lot of projects. Let's implement that maybe June 1st. So that way we have time, we have a runway, and it can execute really, really well. And doctors, I know as a business owner, you want to implement today because you think this is the magic sauce that's going to change your whole life and your whole team's going to be way better. Bottom line is, it's only as good as the plan is to execute. And so even though this could change their world, get your team to help you. They will know. And if they're the team that really loves you and supports you and they're on your team truly, they will find a plan that will make this work and it will be far better than you could have ever imagined. So that's what I say for team buy-in. It doesn't feel great when you come back from a CE. I've done this. I'm guilty of it. My team, I'll come back. I'm like, oh my gosh, I went to Tony Robbins and it was the best thing. And we're going to implement this and this. And like, what just happened? Like, you just spun us on our heads and we did not participate in that rah pep rally. No thanks. I'm not excited. And so it's like, got it. Here are the ideas I do want to implement. Let's come up with a game plan of how we can do this so you guys are on board with me. And I think that, again, why is there frustration? Because there weren't expectations that were met. Michelle, why were you like, what? No, because your expectations, I'm coming to work. We've been doing this. Doctor's expectations, you're implementing. You're like, my expectations, no way. Therefore, there's the frustration. So really, and I think all things can happen. It's just a timing piece of if it's going to happen really, really well and you'll get amazing buy-in, or if you're going to have resentment to where no matter how great of a product or process, it actually flops because you didn't get them to buy in.
Well, I think that was an excellent place to give everybody your information so they can reach out to you and listen to your podcast, because this was such great advice and really fun. So I'm sure they can go find way more of this kind of content with the Dental A team. So how did they find you?
Well, thank you guys. And where your guys' podcast is rocking awesome for hygiene, you guys have other pieces. The idea is, hygienists, if you're frustrated with team members that are not, coming along, we try to make the Dental A team podcast a safe place to grow them as people. So it could be like your subtle way to say, hey, here you go. So our podcast is the Dental A team. It's for all team members. And I'm super excited, Michelle and Andrew, to have you guys speak on the Dental A team because I don't know hygiene. So I'm excited to hear you guys there as well. So pop on over the Dental A team podcast. You guys can go to thedentalateam.com. We're super cool. It's like the Facebook, the Home Depot. It's the Dental A team because someone owns the Dental A team and I can't buy it from them. So until that day, we're cool and we're the Dental A team. So anything we can do to help Michelle and Andrew, anything we can do to help you guys as well, happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yes, thank you guys. All right, Dental A team listeners, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening. And if you love today's podcast, go leave us a review. It takes you 5 seconds, and your review helps more offices, more practices, more team members just like you find out about the Dental A team. Thank you guys so much for being part of my Dental A team family.